So if you don't know what Pluto is, this is going to explain to you a bit about what Pluto is in astrology. And I'm going to read particularly what it means for Virgo and for Pluto in the 6th house. So Pluto in the evolutionary astrology relates to the soul and the soul's underlying evolutionary desires. It is the depth of our unconscious, and it is out of our awareness. We can see that we may repeat unwanted patterns or keep experiencing the same repeated patterns in life. And our Pluto placement and our transit holds information that, when understood, it can smooth our passage through time. So I can absolutely tell you that if you look at your astrology chart and you locate where Pluto is, then what you're going to be able to do is understand what your soul journey is. So next slide. So knowing our Pluto and our chart helps us to objectify and to look at our life and know self. The transit and solar returns and our aspects to Pluto shows us what is being reborn and what is dying or stale, and what needs to change or to be released in our lives. It is looking to see what needs to end to allow for rebirth and regeneration to occur in our lives. Through life, we can experience dark nights of the soul, and this is the door to the deeper self. Our life experiences need to be examined so any wounding or painful events can be thawed out, which allows for a rebirth to take place. We are here to live fully and with an open heart and explore the world, and to transform and transmute that which holds us back. And I think we can all agree with that. So, and we do go through periods of time, and it can be seen in the chart, like when we're struggling with ourselves. And when we look at a chart, we're able to identify what energy we're dealing with, which then enables us to objectify and look at life in a way that's not so painful for us, because we all do have periods of our uptime and our, periods when we struggle. Next slide is the question that we all get to ask ourselves at some point: why am I here? For a lot of people, that happens around 30 at the first Saturn return. I'm not saying people don't ask that question before, but when we seriously begin to ponder on that, how we've been living and also our conditioning, looking at, we're seeing patterns and things that don't work for us, and we're beginning to discover what we want. So next slide is, we've got my solar return here. It was my birthday on the 21st of May. So a solar return chart is based on your birth date, birthday. So what you do is you bring up a chart for when it's your birthday, and you'll see where the planets are falling for that year and what's influencing the year ahead. So you can see here my Pluto fell in my 4th house, and although this is Aquarius and it looks like it might have fallen in Aquarius, it's actually in Capricorn. And you can see that, if you can see my pointer, you can see it will note here that where my Pluto is. And because of that, I'm going through a transformation of, self-image and letting go of past issues, like it's a brand new start for me, because of Pluto's in the 4th house for me. And here is my birth chart, and Pluto, when I was born, is in my 9th house, and a transit on a chart, the green symbols outside the ring that you see here, the transit is in the 2nd house. And Pluto takes around 250 years on average, maybe a bit less, to go all the way around a chart. So it will never go all the way around in our lifetime. But it's worth knowing your transit, your natal placement, your transit, and then you can look at your solar return for the year ahead. So it's all brilliant information to know. So a natal chart represents our potential. It also represents what we have been and where we are at and what we can become. Pluto works in 3 ways in our chart. It can be 1, cataclysmic due to resistance. It can be 2, willing to change in some ways and resisting in other ways out of fear or uncertainty. And 3, to jump in with one's heart and soul with the desire to understand and learn, eliminating resistance. And we have free will, and knowing this means we get to make choices. And it is important we look at the totality of a chart. And in the evolutionary astrology, the baseline that we use is Pluto and the North Node and the South Node. I have a video on the North Node and South Node, which you can check out, which I made last month, but you'll find that on my page. But the resistance is that we know we've got to do something. You know, an example would be, it's raining, you don't want to get wet, you're holding an umbrella in your hand, but you're resisting putting the umbrella up. That's a really simple example. And in resisting putting the umbrella up, you're going to get wet, and you don't want to get wet. So there's a simple idea. I'll give you things to think about in your own life. So here we've got, I love this picture. And the reason I like it is the ruler of Virgo is Gemini. Sorry, the ruler of Virgo is Mercury, and it's basically where it's the right brain, and also Gemini has the ruler Mercury, but it's more to do with the left brain. I hope that makes sense, because I lost myself there for a moment. So, and in that, the right brain is like, you know, it's expansive. It's, you know, the way we sort of creativity, and the left brain is like, I'm reading this now. This is my left brain when I'm reading this, and the right brain is art and creativity. So, going to read this. It's Pluto. I've put transit in the 6th house, but it can also be Pluto in the 6th house or Virgo. And Pluto here is about self-improvement. It's inner self-analysis and looking at all in one's life to see what is to be discarded and what is no longer working. It's a time of reshuffling information and the way in which things are done. This can be a time of criticism of self. During this period, one will purify on all levels, the body and the soul. For some, circumstances may get worse before they get better, and the things that come up can be feelings of being impure and inadequate. What we experience inwardly is reflected by outer circumstances. And when we project, the same vibration is often projected back onto us. Self-doubt sparks adjustment inwardly and allows for new thoughts and feelings and ideas. This is generally a time of crisis, and again, this time allows us to adjust our inner selves and to reset our compass. Here we get to release ideas and beliefs. It's a time to look at our attitudes and preconceived ideas. Change breaks down the original structures and ways of being and thinking. Our inner and outer security will change, and a restructuring of our thinking will occur. The Virgo side of Mercury organizes information and boxes and classifies information, and the Gemini side of Mercury collects and needs information in order to make logical connections. Virgo wants the facts and details on how one things connect. So when I said that right brain, that's what Virgo is. It's, you know, it's organizing, and one has to be creative in order to organize things. One doesn't have to be that creative in collecting information, if that makes sense there. Next slide. So when we mentally connect them, then pictures form. So when we're mentally collecting, we form pictures. This is a time of bringing in new knowledge, which changes our reality by putting things together in a different way. A look at what is not working anymore. It's purging. Here, the past, a future, and the future bang into each other to be brought to the surface. And when resisted, there can be irritability, anxiousness, and nervousness. Our mental stress manifests in the body. One may feel underappreciated for levels of work carried out, and one may feel limited, which causes feelings of being suppressed. Here one can look at any criticism from others and reflect upon it. As we are growing and transforming, there is no need to feel guarded and irritated. Information from others and circumstances can be used to look at what changes we can make, and this is a positive time where the body and mind and soul is being purified. It's a time of regeneration. There may be change of work and a time of creating new foundations, and a time of transforming from the past to the future. One can clean up their diet and their foods. Body care can be upgraded, and self-care. And all that is old is being left behind, and all that is no longer of use is being discarded. After this 1 year period, well, you will, or 1 year if it's your solar return, sorry, after this period, one will feel alive and passionate about the future. So the solar return is 1 year. I have this in my 6th house solar return for last year, and it ended. And what it mentioned here, a lot of these things happened for me. So next slide. Here we have Uganda, and he said that mankind is engaged in an eternal quest for that something else he hopes will bring him happiness, complete and unending. For those individual souls who have sought and found God, the search is over. He is that something else. So God is different things to different people, different meanings. So whatever idea that is for you, you can think about what that means. We're engaged in this eternal quest for something else, but actually we're sent back to self. What we're looking for is inside of us. So next slide. We've got Carl Jung here, and Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And this is the beautiful thing about astrology, which Carl Jung also did in his practice. He looked at 500 charts of couples, and he understood astrology and how useful it was. That when we make the unconscious conscious, then when we bring it to consciousness all that's underneath, then life can improve because we're really looking at it. And I can see here how this statement has a direct connection to Pluto in our charts. And then what you resist not only persists, but will grow in size. So think about that. If we don't deal with our issues, then they do become problematic on occasion, and sometimes more often than not. And resistance determines the magnitude of our problems or confrontations. And confrontations are not always a bad thing, because when we get confronted with something, then we got to look at change. And, you know, this is what life is. It's all about changes. The leaves fall off the trees. You know, there are cycles to things. There's birth, death, transformation. And finally, the source material is Jeff Wolfgreen, Pluto 1, The Evolutionary Journey of the Soul, and Carl Jung, a few various quotes there, and Uganda, and some pictures from Google. And if you want me to look at your chart with you and you want to understand it more, or to look at, you know, traumatic events in your past, and you want to know how to transcend things, then I've got a lot of wisdom that I can share with you and see what your chart has to say. So that's it for today. And I'll be back next week with Virgo with Libra. That's it. Libra is next week. Thanks for watching.